This is Joshua Hart here for Seconds Out. Delighted today to be joined by my good friend Jamie Moore. Jamie, as always, pleasure to have you on. How's everything been?
All good, thanks, mate. Yeah, you okay?
Very good, mate. All the better for being joined by yourself. We'll start off, we'll get straight into things. This week was meant to be Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis in Manchester, but a rescheduled date from an injury on Jack's end. Um, First of all, how is Jack's injury? Can you go into any detail about what the injury was?
Yeah, no, well, I don't really want to go into the details about it, to be honest. But fully recovered now. It's just meant that the 2 or 3 weeks it took to get himself back to where he is now meant that he just couldn't fulfill all the training obligations that he would need to do to be ready for a fight of the magnitude of Progress. So it's not the end of the world because at least he got the date rescheduled, and it's it was only what was it like 8 or 10 weeks further on from the date. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, but yeah, he's in good form and he's back at it full throttle.
Fair enough. And when we look at the rescheduled date, I've seen a few talks saying it was quite tough. From what you know, how tough was it to get a rescheduled date for this fight?
Apparently that was the only date available. So we were lucky in a sense because that arena, um, because it's new, it's really popular. Everyone's going there. Some big headlines on a Saturday night in all different areas of and entertainment. So I'm just glad that because it was obviously a prestigious thing with Jack being the first boxing match to top the bill there. So I'm glad that it's still going to be able to be us, and then that day was available for him.
And when we look at Regis Prograis as fighter, what do you believe Regis's best attributes are?
And he's got great timing. He can punch. He's powerful, and he's very deceiving. He looks like he isn't that sort of sharp or quick. He seems quite flat-footed, but that's where your timing comes into it. He sort of, his anticipation of stuff coming his way. Um, but you know, I'd say probably the best version I've seen of Regis is probably the one against Josh Taylor because Josh Taylor was really at his best then, and that's the fight you can sort of. It was a toss 'em to see who got it, and obviously Josh got the decision, and rightly so because it was a close fight which could have gone either way. But I think that's the sort of best version we've seen of him, and I think stylistically he'll probably give Jack some problems early on. But Jack's brain is like a computer, and he just sort of analyzes whatever's coming his way, the problems he's got to solve, just works it out and then breaks it down. And I'm looking forward. There's no doubt in my mind Jack wins. I'm looking forward to seeing how the sort of fight navigates and how it starts to sort of take different tangents because the amount of experience Prograis got at this level um, means that presumably when Jack starts to work him out, he'll change it up and he'll switch and come in a different shape or form. So so I think it was a little bit of a game of chess early on, but Prograis he's very good at cutting the ring off and imposing his style on you, which should drag Jack into the type of fight, which means that after a few rounds, I anticipate it's going to be really good. The styles will gel and they'll start to sort of have some exchanges. Maybe a little bit like the rematch with Josh Taylor, because I think Jack sort of started really well, but Josh really pushed on in the middle rounds, bit down on his gum shield and made it really competitive, and it dragged the best out of Jack. Um, and that's what I believe Regis Prograis is going to do. He's going to bring the best out of Jack.
What do you believe that Jack does better than Regis Prograis?
Josh Taylor, me.
No, what does Jack Catterall do better than Regis Prograis?
Or what does he do better?
Yeah,
Um, well, stylistically, they're very different. I think, Jack's also got very good timing. So I think that's going to be one of the things. I think Jack has quicker hands than Regis. He has better feet, and his defensive skills are better. But in terms of timing and judgment of distance, I think they're very, level on that aspect. And I think it'll be a case of the battle of who's going to be able to time the other person and sort of force those errors out of each other. At some point in that type of fight, someone has to go for it and go, listen, I can't sit around and wait on the outside. We have to just go for this and try and sort of not necessarily take one to give one, but force the fight onto the opponent. And I anticipate that Regis is going to come and not let Jack dictate the pace, try and force his pressure on him, and try and land some big shots. I'm anticipating he's going to try and work the body. He throws his jab from really low down, Regis, and it can be really awkward because it comes from low down under the vision. So there's loads of little aspects what we've got to work on where we make sure that Jack's sort of versed on it. He understands the problems what are going to be in front of him. But like I've said many times, the way Jack sort of just analyses and breaks things down himself as the rounds go on, I've rarely seen a fighter as good as Jack at doing it. So that's why I say I'm looking forward to seeing those first 2 or 3 rounds pan out, to see the problems what Prograis can give him and watch Jack work them out.
Well, moving forward, we've had some big movements within mainly the heavyweight division. Obviously, while we're in a bit of a quiet period of boxing at the moment, I'd say. But a couple of weeks back now, we had the Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov card in LA, and one of the big talking points from there was Martin Bakole, obviously stopping Jared Anderson in 5 rounds in, according to the bookies, was an upset. But since then, he's mainly targeting a fight with Zhilei Zhang. How do you see a fight between Martin Bakole and Zhilei Zhang unfolding?
It's a fantastic fight. Honestly, I really do like that fight. I'd not seen a lot of Bakole, to be honest, and I saw he lost that one fight, and I've seen Billy Nelson's always been talking in such a high light of him. So you sort of look at that and you think, well, Billy's been around the game so long. There's no way. There's no smoke without fire. He knows what he's talking about, and you could see in that performance why he's had so much faith in him. I love how relaxed he was. That lead right hand and that left uppercut were dynamite. And yeah, I think Zhang will give him way more problems in different ways than what he got posed in that fight. But certainly the southpaw and the awkwardness of Zhang is going to be much more difficult. Even for a big guy, Zhang's very good mobile. He's quite mobile and athletic. But that to me showed that Bakole can sort of not mix it at the top level, so to speak, because Anderson wasn't sort of proven at top level. But like you mentioned there, Bakole wasn't picked to win that fight. He was a big underdog, and I thought he made it look easy in the end. So now he's put himself in a position where he can start to try and prove what himself and Billy Nelson have been talking about all these years, and see whether he can really mix it with the guys at the top end. And I think the Zhang fight is the perfect fight for him to go in there and force a world title shot, because you beat someone like Zhang, and this scenario which is unfolded with Turkey Al Sheikh, where he's now in a position where he's getting the big promoters together and making these big fights happen. It's not like we've had the situations in the past where, for instance, if Bakole goes and beats Zhang, it's years ago, it wasn't as straightforward as going, well, he's beat him now. Now he should, he's entitled to a world title shot, and I think he'll get one. He would be entitled to a world title shot, but the chances of him getting it, because the politics would have been much more difficult than it is with the way the game is at the moment. So I've no doubt that if he comes through that fight, if that fight comes off, then I've no doubt that he would be in line then for getting one of the big sort of 3 or 4 heavyweights in the world.
Oleksandr Usyk has come out recently in an interview and said that he'd fight Anthony Joshua for a 3rd time, as he has no right to deny Joshua a 3rd fight, because the fights between Usyk and Joshua propelled Usyk to a new level of stardom. But if a third fight is to get made between AJ and Usyk, how would AJ have to go about trying to beat Usyk?
Listen, I think part of the problem he had with Usyk was he was very hesitant. He didn't. I think he was still struggling to find his confidence, where he wasn't letting his hands go as fluently as we know he can do. And that's why I say I feel like he's in the best form of his career at the minute, because we've seen him sort of he had all those fights in between where they were sort of educational fights where you could see he was working on stuff. His ring craft, his defense, but he wasn't letting his hands go like he has done in the past. Now he seems to have got to the point where, and I think Ben Davison has gone a long way in bringing this out of him, is where he's just sort of let loose and just go for it. And now he's got the experience, he's got all the experience what he's had over his career. Yet he's now gone back to that sort of raw or killer type of mentality where he just goes in there and lets his hands go. So now I feel like we can get the best of AJ, because the experience added to the fact that he's just going to let his hands go. So yeah, I think if we can see him, he could even improve still. How old's AJ? Is he 32? 30, 32?
He's 35.
He's 35 now, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's still not old for a heavyweight, but he's definitely getting to the point where I'd say he's at his peak, and I don't think we're going to see a better version of him. But if he's going to beat anyone, he's probably going to do it now at this moment in time.
And then obviously before we can even think about a fight between AJ and Usyk for a third time, September 21st, it is official. Was the Anthony Joshua will face Daniel Dubois. But how does Daniel Dubois have to control himself in that ring in order to beat Anthony Joshua?
Do you know, he's another one where I've been really impressed with how he's improved from losses. Losses aren't a bad thing as long as you learn from them and improve from them. So Daniel Dubois is a dangerous guy. He can punch. He can really punch. I just don't know if it's a little too early again. Not because he wouldn't be capable of beating AJ, because I feel like in another 2 years' time, Dubois will probably be the guy. The top three are probably out of the picture by then. Say 3 years' time, I'd be guessing Fury, AJ, and Usyk are gone. So I think Dubois might end up the top guy when he's got a little bit more experience under his belt, and he keeps building his confidence. I just think he's maybe a year or so too early for going in with someone like AJ, who's in the form of his career. And going back to what you said before, I know AJ's been beaten by Usyk twice. I think he's got a much better chance of beating him this time in the form he's in now. So yeah, if we're looking at AJ v Usyk, I'd give him a much better chance of beating him this time than I would have done previously.
Okay. And then Usyk versus Fury 2 in December. What does Fury need to change in his style, maybe his team, but what needs to change in order to try and beat Oleksandr Usyk this time?
Well, I mean, obviously, that there was a big moment it was in the ninth round when he was nearly gone, and I tend to feel that if that hadn't have happened, and I know Usyk was sort of growing into the fight and getting better. If he'd have not ran into that backhand and ended up in that trouble, he'd have probably got that. He'd have got over the line and got the victory. I do feel like as the fight was going on, Usyk got used to that style, got his judgment at distance better. And if Fury fights the same way as he did last time, I feel like Usyk will start to pull away with the fight earlier than he did last time. And I'd spoken about Fury using his size advantage more against a guy like Usyk, who's so skillful, but so much smaller than him. You have to sort of use your best attributes to your advantage. So I don't think he should be too sort of erratic with it, but he should definitely impose himself a bit more this time, rather than giving too much ground and allowing Usyk to get into a nice rhythm and routine. I think if Fury roughs him up a little bit more, uses his weight, sort of stands and drags Usyk into a bit more of a fight early on, and then go in and out of that, I think he has to make Usyk think more. You can't just allow him to sort of walk him down like he did last time. I think he can do it. I think Fury can win the rematch. I just think he's got to drag him into a more of a war of attrition where it's not just a boxing match, because going into a bit of a chess match with someone like Usyk, who's so clever, is the wrong tactics for me.
And then just very lastly, we've recently seen the 2024 Olympics in Paris. Supposedly, as it stands, the last one with boxing as part of the Olympic cycle. What do you make of boxing being removed from the 2028 cycle?
Mate, it's a crying shame, and it's not a surprise because now, as we've seen in these Olympics, some of the decisions were atrocious, and the integrity of the sport has been questioned for many years, especially in the amateur game. So it's no surprise that the Olympic Committee have had enough and are getting rid. Now, hopefully, another organisation can approach the Olympics and beg them to keep it in for next time, and if they oversee it in a different way. And the big problem with it is there's no independent in it, so they're sort of ruling themselves, and we have the same problem in the professionals where where who do you go to speak to if you have a problem with the governing body? So say I have a problem with the British Boxing Board of Control, who don't answer to anybody except themselves. Who do I go to? There's no independent organisation who you go to and address a problem like you would do in the amateurs if you've got a problem with the scoring. So I feel like there should be an independent organisation set up where every commission in the world then signs into it and says, okay, for the better of the sport in the future, we're gonna sign into this program where there's a level playing field and set of rules what everyone's got to abide by, and even if the commissions step out of line a little bit, they've got to answer to someone, and that's a little bit like the AIBA. They've never answered to anyone except themselves. So understandably, because some of the judging has been terrible, and we're not going to see it in the next Olympics as it stands. And I hope to God that someone can come up with something to make it plausible to put them back in there, because the amount of gold medalists who then turn over and we love to watch their careers progress, it won't be the same. It's an unbelievable achievement to win a world gold medal as an amateur fighter and then turn over, but he hasn't got the same prestige as winning an Olympic medal. So I just hope for the fighters' sakes that they can keep it in there, because it'd be a crying shame.
How damaging is it for amateur boxers around? Well, not necessarily just amateur boxers, but as fans, there's nothing quite like, hearing a pro debute's been announced for an Olympic medalist. We've just had Lewis Richardson from Team GB win. A lot of people will be excited for his pro debut, as with all the other Olympians. How damaging is it going to be if we don't see Olympic boxing ever again?
Exactly. Like, the prestige of it is going to be all gone. And so in loads of ways, the history of our sport is at risk because of this. And I don't know. I heard that there was another organisation being set up to go to the IOC to put forward a plan to try and keep it in there. And I hope to God it comes off, because I think we need it. The prestige of it, the whole thing of being the best amateur, being Olympic champion, and then turning professional. It's just a great story, and you're not going to have those type of stories if there is no Olympic Games. Simple as that.
Well, Jamie, thank you very much for your time as always. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And hopefully we can catch up again soon. Thank you.
No worries. Cheers, mate.